Hey, don't click away from this video. Oh my god, you need to see this. Okay, now that I have your attention, let's talk about hooks. Things that immediately grab the audience's attention so they can't put it down or click away. First episodes. Any good first episode introduces an audience to a new world and its inhabiting characters, sets up character relationships and their goals, and establishes the pace, tone, stakes, and the overall vibe of the series. Most importantly though, it has to get you wanting more. As this relates to Pokemon, I began thinking about the first episodes of each Pokemon anime series. And so today, I'm just going to be going through and reviewing each first episode. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, starting with Black and White, the Pokemon anime aired 2 episodes at one time to start off the series, and a lot of introductory sections of Pokemon series last more than one episode too. But I'm only going to be talking about the first episode of every series, because it wouldn't be fair if I picked a varying amount of episodes from a given season to review its quote-unquote episode 1. So yeah, let's get started. Original series, Pokemon I Choose You. You already know that the first episode of Pokemon in this episode of Ionic Bond about the first episodes of Pokemon is the episode titled Pokemon I Choose You, which is the first episode of the Pokemon anime and the first episode of the original series. What a mouthful. Who the hell scripted this thing? Yes, of course we're talking about this one to start off, and I'm glad we're getting this out of the way now because this is an easy S tier, and probably one of, if not the best first episode in the Pokemon anime. It's iconic, it started it all, and not only that, it pretty much fits the bill of a great pilot episode. Immediately we are shown a Pokemon battle on TV, establishing the world. Then we meet Ash, our main character, and he exclaims his goal of being a Pokemon master. Throughout the episode we meet other major characters, Ash's mom, Professor Oak, Misty, Pikachu, and it establishes Gary as Ash's long-standing childhood friend and rival. This episode clearly illustrates that Ash is a rookie trainer, which sets up a clear arc for him to go through in this series as he learns the ins and outs of Pokemon training. And Pikachu is shown to be rebellious and disobedient, so that's another thing to overcome. As for the tone of the show, the comedy of OS is clearly established with things like the Pokédex calling Ash stupid and Pikachu hysterically laughing in response. However, it also shows that it can get climactic and heartfelt throughout via that iconic ending with the Spearows. I mean, there's a clear arc for Pikachu in this episode alone, and the way this episode ends really does make you want more. Advanced Generation, get the show on the road! Right off the bat, we're introduced to May, who is the first deuteragonist in the Pokemon anime, so she deserves her own little introduction, and we get that here as it details May's background and her motivations. Next we see Ash, and this part only makes sense if you saw the last episode of the original series in which Pikachu started to get really sick, so we're immediately thrown back into the plot. While I like this for continuity purposes, because I'm a continuity show, if we're viewing this in the vacuum of first episodes, it could potentially be a bit confusing for new fans. That being said, I think the world building in this episode is well done. Not only do we see multiple wide shots of the downtown areas, but also the lush nature-filled areas of Little Root Town, as well as Birch's lab and his assistants. Another thing this episode does well is show how Ash really is back to square one. With Pikachu temporarily incapacitated, he has nobody to help him de-escalate the situation when Pikachu can't control his electrical buildup. And the end sets Ash and May up to be companions, and I personally think it keeps you interested to watch. So yeah, it's a decent first episode, and I feel like it passes the checks, so I'll give it a solid B tier. Diamond and Pearl, following a maiden's voyage. Alright, time for Diamond and Pearl, and while May was a deuteragonist in AG, this series introduces Dawn as the anime's first ever dual protagonist, and this episode definitely illustrates that very well. There's barely any Ash in this episode, but that's a good thing. I personally find this episode to be very well done because not only is it just refreshing to watch a new character experience the world without the immediate influence of Ash, but it keeps us wondering what exactly is going on his side of things since he doesn't appear until the very end, where Team Rocket steals Pikachu, but this time he gets blasted off at the same time as the trio, so that keeps us excited for what's to come in the next few episodes. Back to Dawn though, they set up her background as the daughter of a famous coordinator very well as establishing the newfound relationship between her and Piplup, causing her to choose it as her starter. It's a great origin story for these two, and we also get set up for the Team Galactic stuff way later in the series, in the very first episode. We don't see the likes of Paul, so we don't get Ash's long-term goal and motivation, but we don't need it because we already know Ash is going to challenge the Sinnoh League. I think it was a great decision to focus on Dawn for this episode and give us a little Ash tease at the end. This is another S in my opinion. Black and White, in the Shadow of Zekrom. I actually think, in a vacuum, that the first episode of Black and White is solid. Not only does it do a great job at establishing that Unova is a faraway region with subtle details like Ash going to a major region for the first time via airplane instead of ferry, or blimp, but it immediately reintroduces Team Rocket in their new and actually competent form, and Zekrom actually appears shrouded in mystery. They also do a really great job of showing off all the new Pokemon of the Unova region while sharing that Pokemon from other regions are rare to find in Unova. Also, a little Iris and Axew tease before they're properly introduced in the next episode, so really good world building in my opinion. However, this is where the problems with the episode come in. I'm not really going to tell you anything that hasn't been said before, but it's stupid that Ash loses to Trip here. I get Pikachu couldn't use electric moves, but Ash is great at improvising, so it's uncharacteristic for him to lose in this situation. As I said, in a vacuum, this is a solid episode, but we can't look at it in a vacuum because they objectively mischaracterize Ash here, and make the Pikachu that literally beat Latios 3 episodes before this lose to a brand new Snivy. So I'm going to put this episode in C tier, but at least the world building was solid. XY, Kalos, where dreams and adventures begin. XY has another great first episode. Unlike DP where it focuses entirely on Dawn, we mostly get focus on Ash, Clement, and Bonnie. However, similar to DP, we do start off with the point of view of the female companion. Serena! But only for a brief moment, showing her life as a Rhyhorn racer in training. Then we move on to Ash and we instantly get to see tons of new Kalos Pokemon as well as mentions of other towns in the region. And Ash gets to explore the big bustling Lumiose city that he just landed in. Oh, additionally a bit of nice world building is that Alexa, who was introduced near the end of Black and White, is the one who told Ash about Kalos, giving the feeling of a connected world. Then we meet Clement and Bonnie, and we get a little bit of a look into their sibling relationship, which is nice. Another thing they do in this episode is show how much of a focus battles and the animation are going to be in this series. I mean, we even get the little versus card animations before the battle, which were a mainstay in XY. Good way to set the tone early. Another character thing that they do is show how competent of a trainer Ash is with the whole distracting Bunnelby strat in that match. Team Rocket then interrupts, and honestly, they're a highlight in this episode, and the return of Wobbuffet, who was absent in BW, is a big reason for that. Slowly throughout this episode, we get to see this interesting Pokemon, and he's revealed to be Froakie, who shows its worth in the fight, but gets injured in the battle. So the end of the episode is them rushing Froakie to the professor's lab. This is an A tier. Serena being absent after the theme song is a reason that it's not S, but I have to say, if this included the second episode, it would definitely be S tier. Sun and Moon, Alola to New Adventure. This episode, like a lot of other first episodes at this point, is so good at world building. That's honestly one of the key strengths of the series, and it's shown off perfectly here. We immediately meet Lana, we're shown Poke Ride, Melee Island, some markets, tons and tons of Alola Pokemon, including Litten, who will become one of Ash's key Pokemon in a future episode. And we're shown exactly why Ash is in the region. This episode also introduces Tapu Koko, a key legendary in the series. And finally, we make it to the Pokemon School. There we meet the rest of the characters, Mallow, Lily, Sophocles, Samson Oak, Professor Kukui, and Kiawe, who is fighting against Team Skull and destroys them with a sick-ass Z move. They do a solid job illustrating what's going on through Ash's mind that leads to him deciding to stay in Alola, just before Tapu Koko shows up and gives Ash his own Z-Ring and Z-Crystal. Now, a few things I don't like about this episode. I do wish we actually got to see Ash say bye to his mother, and also letting her know he wanted to stay, but that's just a minor complaint because while this episode doesn't quite hook me in like OSRDP, I think it excels in pretty much all other categories, so I give it an A. Journeys. Enter Pikachu. This is a pretty strange episode. I mean, it's a nice prologue to the entire Pokemon anime, but it doesn't really set up Journeys that much aside from introducing Go and Cerise. Oh, and Chloe's here. It also gives us the reason behind Go's goal, which I do like, but this episode is also centered around Pikachu's origin story, and it's so wholesome. I love getting to see Pichu's relationship with his new family and how it's basically Kangaskhan's adopted child. I actually like how they somewhat intersect the two plots here, with Go chasing Mew and then the baby Kangaskhan chasing Mew and almost getting hurt because of it. In the end, I think Pichu's evolution is the highlight of the episode. It decides to leave its Kangaskhan family, but reminiscing on the good memories and love it received causes it to evolve by friendship. Now for what brings this episode down for me a ton. This shouldn't have been the first episode, because the Kangaskhan stuff plays no role in the series going forward, so it should have been a special episode instead. The following episode should have been the first episode of Journeys. If it was, I would have given that an A. But since this is what we got, even though I do really like it, it doesn't serve this series well as a first episode, so it gets a D. Horizons, the Pendant of Beginning, Part 1. That brings us to Pokemon Horizons, which I'm watching for the first time as I script this, so you're getting my immediate review following watching episode 1 for the first time. I'll be honest with you, for the first 2/3-ish of this episode, I really wasn't enjoying it. It started to feel a bit boring and monotonous, not gonna lie, but surprisingly, it got better. I really liked seeing the new characters, the Indigo Academy, and Lico's new Sprigatito. The relationship that they are starting to develop as shown in this episode is really sweet as well. However, where this episode really picks up is the ending portions. With Amethio suddenly appearing, it really builds up some tension, which I enjoyed getting to watch, and Freed's debut was epic as well. Another thing I like is the slow bits of backstory and characterization we get out of Liko in this episode. We learn she's from Paldea, that her parents previously went to the Indigo Academy, that her grandmother gave her the pendant, and that her parents are generally pretty busy, just through this one episode via clues from dialogue. So this episode gets an A tier from me, and I think that if I were to include the second episode, it might get an S, but I haven't seen it yet, so I'm gonna go do that now. But since we just finished talking about first episodes, you can be the first to comment about your favorite first episode of the Pokemon anime down below. And don't forget to subscribe to become a part of the Ionic Bond phenomenon. See ya!